Right. So, to begin with, there are two aspects here, especially with the web world. We deal with two different code bases. One is a static, and the other one is our RCA online. So, I will take an example, and from there, we will go through the process how we evolved into one technology to the other, and how we manage the communication. Um, So let us take our accounts details page. So if we go to our rci.com, yes. So this is our account details page for the week's users. So from here, based on our URL, we can identify which controller are we triggering at this point, and from there how we start our rendering. And for this, if you observe, we are using our weeks account module. So every in our application, right, everything is modularized. So the URL path will let us know which module are we referring to, and this query path, right, this will let us what is the endpoint that we are trying to trigger in our controller. Uh, so when we walk through our code base, this is our code base, RC Online, and if we see our path that says like weeks account slash details. So here weeks account is our module and details is our path. So our navigation will be to weeks account module. As we can see here, this is our weeks account module in RC Online, and our controllers are in the Java base. Once we go through the Java directories, we are going to see our controllers, and our JSPs are all based in web app, and the communication between the controllers and the web app is being used by tiles.xml. So we are using our tiles, uh, what we say. So tiles is a JSP notation which actually lets us to get the appropriate path and to provide all the files that we want to be included for a particular screen. Um, so today I opened a couple of files so that like we can start from here. Uh, so if you see account details controller, right, this is the controller that we are using for our my account details. So how do I know this? The path will let us know. So this is the path, the one what I'm highlighting, slash details, is the same path that we are using on the browser. So the endpoint of this particular function is going to let us know what is the value that we are using for our tiles.xml. So the endpoint of this is we are returning my account wow non-plat. So it is for a non-platinum user, my account details page. Uh, so especially in the web world, we don't write these controllers, but we are always encouraged to code so that like we will have an end-to-end knowledge about how the data is being flowed from one end to the other, especially from server to the web and from web to the presentation layer. So if we take this as a keyword to take to search, and tiles.xml will always be available in our web app module. So in the weeks account in the source we have our web app module, and all our views will be here. So along with the views, we have our tiles.xml. So for every single module, we will have a tiles.xml dedicated to that particular module. So if you open this tiles.xml, and we look for the definition. So here we have our definition for the tiles. So this definition is the one which is having the list of the files that need to be included. So we are using our my account wow nonplat.jsp. So this is the JSP that is being called when we hit this particular when we are triggering this particular URL. So from here we can continue, but I want to give a brief description that is like how we are differentiating between our server-side rendering and client-side rendering. So as we know, JSP is a server-side technology, and the entire page will be rendered on the server side. But there are few limitations when we are going with the server-side rendering. If the data is all available and we know that the data is not going to change based on the user selection, then we always recommend to go with the server-side rendering. In that way, we don't take any of the browser processing time to get the context and then to present it on the browser. So, am I going a bit fast, or like are you guys able to follow?
No, you're good.
Yes. So, as I said, like there are few things that need to be rendered on the that are not going to change based on the user selection. So we are going to render it on the server itself, and and some of the things are going to change based on the user selection. For example, user selects something on the page, and based on that, the results changes. So those kind of details will be presenting on the DOM, but we don't want to refresh the DOM. So those are the things what we are trying to use jQuery or any other front-end browser-based technologies for the presentation layer. So what sort of things that need to be on the server-side rendering? So for example, the list of JavaScript files or the list of the CSS files that need to be available on the page, these are all predetermined. We are not going to change the files or the content of the files based on any of the user selection. It is one click for the user to come to the account details page, especially if you consider my account details page. So the header, that is not going to change based on the user selection. The structure of the page, that is not going to change based on the user selection. The same way the CSS, these are the things that are not going to change based on the user selection. So we tend to bring all this content in the first pass itself. That is like when we hit the controller, we want to bring all these details to the page. So what we do, we separate we have all our JS and CSS files on the server-side rendering itself. So we have all the details. So tomorrow, if we want to use a new CSS for this particular page, for example, we want to use xyz.css. So how do you include that CSS file? In general, we want to use it on the we want to include that on the JSP, right? But if we follow this particular template, right, this is a template that we are using. This is the definition that we are using for my account details. So this will have all the details about the different CSS or JS files or different JSP files that need to be included along with this. So it is like a nested things. So one common practice in RCI is we have this include css.jsp and include js.jsp. So include css.jsp is nothing but we have all the list of CSS files listed in this particular JSP itself. So I'll walk through the code base for once, and we'll continue from there. So as we can see, this is include css.jsp and include js.jsp. I'll just open them for now. And right. So this is our include css.jsp, where we have all the required CSS files for that particular page. For my account details page, we need all the CSS available here, and include js.jsp is all the required JavaScript files that we need on that particular page. So any new file that we want to add, and if it is going to be, if it need to be available across the page, so this is a regular path, or this is a custom that we follow. So we just need to add or require a JS file in the include.js, and it will be available on that particular page. So far, so clear, right?
Yeah. Everything is crystal clear. Yeah.
So another advantage of using tiles.xml is we can remove our redundancy. So for example, here earlier we were looking for this particular module, that is my account wow non-plat. So this is the definition that we are using for the account details page. Along with this, there are many other pages in the account details itself which have some common files to be included. So tiles.xml will provide us that flexibility to reuse a particular definition in multiple locations. So that way we need not rewrite everything at once. For example, if we observe this particular line, definition name equals to my account wow non-platinum, which is extending a layout definition. So if you see that almost like every single definition is extending layout. So what we have in layout is this. So layout is nothing but another definition which has what are all the files that need to be included. For example, it need to have a header, it need to have a footer, and if there is any error, then we need to have an error block. And there are some common files, for example, included css.common and include.js.jsp. So everything in this common directory is nothing but we are using across multiple URLs. It's not only for the account details, it could be used for the search results page, it could be used across any other page. So tiles.xml is providing us a flexibility to remove any redundancy, so that we need not write all these 6 lines everywhere. Instead, we are just extending our definition so that these will be included along with the custom files that we need to include. So if we go to our browser once again, so this is a very typical part. In every HTML page, a basic funda will tell us that we need to have a header, a body content, and a footer. And all our pages looks very similar to that structure, that we will tend to have a header, body, and a footer. But in reality, we don't have a header, we don't have a footer. All we have is a body.
Okay.
So yes, this particular part is very tricky. So please try to concentrate on this part. We don't have our regular HTML header in any of our pages. Mostly any of our pages. It is always the body, and the header what we are seeing on the layout, right, on the desktop, that is nothing but an individual section inside the body which acts like a header, and our footer is again an individual section in the body which acts like a footer. The reason is, so now before I tell the reason, now we need to deviate a little bit from our JSP to a different technology. So earlier, I think since Rachana has given you guys a very brief insight about what is TeamSite and what they do. So in our aspect, anything which changes based on the region or any certain flag, so if we want it to be dynamic enough for certain members across different regions, we tend to go with TeamSite. So our header is not common across all our regions. So this is EN-US header, and the header might change, will definitely change for ENGB, and it could be different for our LATAM users. And so every region has its own header. So we can't have one single header. So this header needs to be rendered based on user login. So how the header is rendered? So we are here. we are here. So as I said earlier, we are extending this layout, right? And in that, if we observe, we are having an attribute that is header, and this is the path for the header, JSP/common/header.jsp. So I took privilege just to open that particular header here. So if you see the path, that is nothing but our JSP/common/header.jsp. So in this particular JSP, we have the request to team site to bring the appropriate header for this particular page. So once the user hit the controller is calling the tiles.xml, and the tiles.xml is referring to header.jsp. And in the header.jsp, this is the path that we provided for the header page to load. That is like, since we logged in, account details page is a logged in page, so we are calling post login, and we are saying like application type. So it could be WoW or POW, and we are providing which locale. That is also provided it's in the session. So we are providing the locale. For example, for EN-US, it's going to be EN-US, and for England, it's going to be EN-JB. And then we are providing the path for the header.page. So header.page is our team site page. So in team site world, page is a component for UI developers like us. For us, it is a component, but in team site world, that is called as a page. So we are calling this header as it's like an AJAX call, but it is made on the server side. So it is like a request, and in the response, we receive this entire response as HTML, and we render it. So inside the body, we are rendering our header. Are we clear with this now, till now?
Yeah, we are clear.
Yes. So this is how our team site pages are being included, especially with these things, right? Like especially with the header and the footer, we are not changing anything based on the user selection. It is all decided based on the user login. So these things could be rendered at the server side itself, so that we need not make an AJAX call to bring it, and meanwhile we did not block any of our browser rendering time. And the other aspect here, right, for example, how we are going to use our team site pages based on the user selection. So if we see this part where we are showing platinum benefits, so this is the advertisement. We are saying like there are much benefits for a platinum member. So this is again based on the user, but it's again being rendered using AJAX calls. It is not consistent for every user, so there need to be some data available before we make this call, and we don't want to wait on the server till we have all that data. So we moved the implementation from server to client side. So in the client side, to render this, what we need to do is the same thing. Here, whatever we are doing it as a page load call, right? We are going to request this particular URL in an AJAX, and we are going to have the response as .html. So in that way, we are able to communicate with the team side, both from the server side and from the client side. This is one aspect how we use team site on our pages. The second thing is the lingual. So as I said, this is EN-US member, so everything is in English. So we are displaying everything in English. For example, this membership renewal, last year week's membership paid through. So every text is in English. But when we move this user, like if we want to log in using a LATAM member where we want to display everything in Spanish, we are making use of our message catalog. So 1 second. Let me open one page so that we can talk in more details. Right. So, okay. So here, if we see our text, right, like we have my account. So how the text is translated for for any other locale. So if we see here, we are using our message catalog to bring the response based on the user locale. So that implementation is pre-existing, so we are not changing any of it. But this is like a general custom that we use, where we provide the ID that we need to bring, the ID that is associated with the text, and in what context. So here this particular statement tells us that my account is the text and it is associated with an ID, and the ID is RCIW underscore breadcrumbs underscore 11. So the ID of my account is 11 and the group that it belongs to is RCIW underscore breadcrumbs. So I will go in detail about message catalog in later. I will show you how the message catalog tool is and how do we need to insert and how do we get the references and the process. But just try to remember, so this is one of the flow for any text. We definitely don't want to hard code it. We need to use a message catalog string so that like we have the flexibility to change the context based on the locale. So till now we are talking about our JSP or tiles.xml and our team site context. Now we will go in detail about if we need to do something based on, if we need to change any of the text using dynamic based on the user selection, like we need to make it dynamic enough. So that's when we bring in the browser related technologies. For example, we highly use JavaScript and jQuery, and as we all know, JavaScript is much faster than jQuery, but at the same time jQuery provides us more functionality, like pre-built functionality than our JavaScript. So we use both of them extensively. So in this particular page, right, all our JavaScript is based on, so here we are using a HTML page. So in general tendency, we don't tend to use a specific HTML because like already, are you guys able to see my screen? No, right?
Yes, we are.
I can see.
Okay, we can see it.
Cool. So in general, we don't tend to use a specific HTML page because already our JSP is going to render everything into HTML. But account details is a different case altogether. So this is a different scenario. So I need to navigate to this particular page to show you what is the JavaScript that we are using. So if we follow through the code base, so earlier we used to have all our static in SVN, but very recently we moved it to GitHub. So it has a different path altogether. its code base is in different structure. But earlier again, when we add any changes, right, we need to provide a code prop that is like the changed file names, so that the CM team could have a list of, they could have maintained the delta. But now that is not necessary. They're doing build along with RC Online, so that is one less task for us. So if we see through the code base, so again our static content is again modularized. That is like we have our CSS module, we have our docs, fonts, HTML, images, JS, JSON, everything is modularized. Build is a unique module again. So first we will go to this HTML, from there we'll continue. So we are using light. So if you follow through the code, so my account details.js is the core JavaScript file that we are using for the account details page. So 99% of the actions, right, that are supposed to happen on this page are all maintained in account details.js. So in general, we tend to follow this pattern. Any JavaScript changes, even though unless they are widely used across all the pages, that's when we want to use it as in a common directory, and then we want to use the common functionality. But when they are specific to a module, we should create these JavaScript files in the particular modules as specified. For example, for the account details, we are having my account responsive. In the code base, especially in the scripts, right, we have two my accounts, so don't worry about that. My account is a non-responsive module. So earlier we used to have non-responsive RCA.com, and a couple of years ago we moved everything to responsive. So since we don't want to lose the non-responsive site as well, and we want to toggle off and on during the release, we have both the code bases. So now everything is responsive, so we have everything in my account responsive. So based on the page, so since this is account page, we have my account, and the naming convention should be appropriate, so that you should be able to identify what is the JS file that is there based on a URL itself. So rather than following through the tiles and then JSP and then script, it should be easy for anyone to read and to understand where the file should be. So the navigation will be simple. So in this case, all the JavaScript changes that we require for this particular page is all available in account details page. So this is the same thing that is for across the domain. So if you go to any other link based on the URL, you should be easily able to identify where we have the JS changes. And the same pattern is maintained for the CSS changes as well. So earlier I said this page has .html file which is unique. The reason is because account details page is the first page that we developed using handlebars. So the reason is, if we observe, right, our entire application is in the same sync. It's like in a synchronized mode. So the entire design syncs with each other, and we don't want to create the same modules, especially the same sections or the same viewpoints for every single page. Instead, we want to templatize them. So for templating, we went with the handlebars. So everything we see here is a unique template. Our alert section is a template. Our my account, these details are templatized. membership renewals are template. So everything is templatized. So in this particular page, we started using handlebars. Now handlebars is being used across the application whenever we need to render based on the user selection. I'll show you one more example here. So the link, tell us your interest. So this particular link, right, it is available across the site. It is there in both weeks endpoints, and the endpoints of this particular link is available on the dashboard. It's there in the search. I think it's there in the search results page. It is there in the My Account Details page. So we don't want to create the viewpoint for this multiple times. So we templatized it using handlebars, and the action is provided only one location, but we made it common enough so that all the thing that the business need to do is just to add this in their team site, and we are good to provide them the service. So if we click this, so yeah, we are asking them a couple of questions here, and we can start from there. So this particular section is all developed using handlebars. So again, if we go to our code base, right, so same as JavaScript, we have our HB templates, which is our handlebar section. And so My Account Details, it's all there in My Account and the Account Details handlebars. Our member preferences, so tell us your interest is originally supposed to be member preferences, because we are taking the user preferences, so that is again named after member preferences. So, and if you go further into details, right, as I said, our alert section, for example, here, yes. So alerts is a section on the account details page. So where is the source code for this? It is there in the alerts.handlebars. This is membership renewal. We will have it as membership renewal.handlebars. So our naming convention is so convenient enough so that like everyone who is new to RCI should be able to identify where they need to develop. So this is one new technology that we try to implement, and which is working really good. So we started using across multiple, even our account available units page, where we show the different available units available for a particular selection. Even that is based on the handlebars. So the next thing what we did was, as I said, our include CSS and include JS.jsp's have the list of CSS and JSP files. But when we have a list, browser will try to read them and then understand it sequentially. So one file after the other. And if we have so many files, browser is taking so much time in DOM rendering and DOM processing. And we want to eliminate that, so that like our pages could be much faster. So for that reason, that is one of the reasons. And the second reason was the dependency management. For example, when we want to use Bootstrap, we need to have our jQuery loaded on the DOM first. So if it is only those two files, we can sequentialize them. Like we can add jQuery line on the top, and then we can add the Bootstrap line on the bottom. But when we have so many JS files and so many CSS files, we cannot always track how the files are being included, and if there is any chances that if one file is loaded before the other, then the page collapses. So dependency management is one of the aspects that drove us to implement required.js. So required.js is again another library which provides us the flexibility to tell the browser what are all the required files that we need. For example, required JS files we need for that particular URL, and how the sequence need to be maintained. So
Hello?
Yes, Srini, I'm just opening the file.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah. So if we go with the require.js, right? So require.js has two common definitions. One is we need to define each file so we can actually identify the file name with a name to the file itself. So for example, jQuery-lib is the name given to the jQuery library, and Bootstrap is the name given to the Bootstrap library. So these are the definitions. And in this particular file, right, in search app.js, we are saying that for the search results page, we need all these files. So we gave an array, and this particular function will make sure that it loads these files, and also based on the sequence that we provided, it loads them in the similar sequence. But one advantage of going with require.js is it triggers all the files that we require at once. So one could be loaded after the other, but again, it maintains the sequence. So the dependency will be well taken care, but at the same time, it is providing us asynchronous mode to bring these files onto the DOM. So that is one thing. And the other module in static that confuses most of us is the build. So for the JS, we took care using require so that we can bring all these files in an asynchronous mode, and we are reducing our DOM processing time. So what about the CSS files? There are so many CSS files, and as you know, as the DOM tries to render, it tries to understand all the CSS files. So how can we reduce the load on the DOM to understand all these CSS files? That's when we went with Gulp. So Gulp is a package available on Node, and Gulp itself includes many other packages for concatenation, for minification. So altogether, so this is the file that defines a job. So every time when we build, when we update any of the changes in any of the CSS files provided in this list, we trigger this gulp.js file, which will concatenate, minify the CSS files. So if we follow through this example, right, we are saying concatenate dashboard CSS. So this is for the dashboard page. We require so many CSS files. That is reset, layout, carousel, so many. And instead of loading all of them onto the page, Gulp, what it does is we provided all the source, so it concatenates all the CSS files into one huge file and then minifies it. And along with that, it provides a one-line code. So our output of this particular function is a one-line CSS file for the dashboard screen. So now what happens is all the browser need to do is read one line, and then it has all the information that it requires for the dashboard. So Gulp is one handy tool that is helping us to reduce the DOM loading time. So these are with the JS different technologies, especially with the handlebars, require.js, Gulp that we are using. And for the naming convention, as I said, the name should be in line with the module that we are using, so that people can navigate through. And so when it comes to coding standards, right? So we in general we see that there are some functionalities that we use across the application. So if we know that anytime we observe that if the function is being used in multiple locations, so rather than replicating that function either by writing a new one or by just copycat from one location to the other, we tend to move that function from a specified module location to the common module location so that it will be available for all the modules. So the moment when we realize that it is being used more than 2 locations, we should tend to move the source from the generic module to the common module, so that like it will be across all the modules. What else is there?
So can you show us like that AppSart subject and the Gulp file? So how you used in your application?
So how we use in the application? Yes, that's a very good question. I forgot to say about this. There are 3 things here. There are two different technologies. One, the Gulp, and the second one, the handlebars.
Mm-hmm.
So Gulp is a single file, but when we go to our handlebars, right? Yeah, from here. Excuse me. So the HB templates, right? This particular module has all the details about different templates that we used and different modules. For example, account details handlebars is the source for the handlebars that we use for the account details page, and so our application is a Java JSP based application. And the rest of the technologies we used are browser-based technologies. But handlebars, right, it is a different case altogether. Handlebars, Gulp, these are all node-based technologies. So any of these node-based technologies, right, they cannot be included directly into our application. So these handlebar files or the Gulp file, which provides us the concatenation and require and the Gulp, not the require. So let's leave require for now. Gulp and handlebars, right? This, as I said, these are all node-based technologies. So how we use in our application, right? We use Node on our missions, on our local missions. So there are 2 different ways here. One, we are still working with the CM team. So we started this process a couple of months before to automate this rather than individual user have the Node environment on their own. We try to have Node environment in our Jenkins. So that is still an ongoing process. So probably we can expect this process to be completed by end of this release or the next. So what is happening is all these handlebar files, right? We run a Node module in our system, but the Node module is not on the production site. So using that, we generate a JS file. So here, all these handlebar files are having the source, and once we run the handlebar compilation, we have the compiled files.js. So this is the output file that is generated after compiling all the source files. Mm-hmm. And we move this particular file manually from this particular module in the HB templates account details module. We move this file to the appropriate module. That is, we are talking about account details. So this particular file will be available in account details. For example, we are going through JS and my account responsive. We will have that file, compiled files.js. So this particular file is moved manually from the source, from the handlebars module to the JS module. And once it is a JavaScript file, it could be used in our application, so that this technology will be in line with the technological suite that we are using right now. The same way with the Gulp, if we see this, excuse me. So gulp.task or Gulp on its own, this is a Node module. So this runs on the Node server. Again, in our development or in the production, we don't have a node module. So what we do is like in our local environment, we have our node servers where we trigger these tasks, and then our destination. So for every task, there is a destination, and the destination is having the path built. So once all the files specified, especially here in the concatenate dashboard CSS, all these files are concatenated and made into a single file, into a single line file, and is creating a new file in the build module. So in the static, if we go to build, so here we have weak search results dot CSS. So yes, so we have weak search results dot min dot CSS. So this particular file, how is it built? It is built by running this task in our local module, and we given a name to that, and there will be a file created by the node in our local in this build module with the name that we provide here, and we are going to check, we are using this min.css in our application. So this is very similar, like what if we are using a SAS or less. So those files have all our CSS details, how we want to generate the CSS, but they need to either run on a node module, or we need to pre-compile them so that we get an output of CSS file so that we can use it in our application, right? The similar manner we are using Gulp. But the catch here is, as of today, we don't have an automated system so that like these files will be generated on their own, and we have the source maintained as well. So the reason is very simple. So in RCI, the way we bring in a new technology is, first thing, once we see that there is a new technology in the market and we know that it is doing very good in the market, we will have a technical discussion with our architect team. So once we provide our insights, this particular topic could be either way around. Even the architect could reach to us and say like, there's a new technology and it will be in line with our technical suite. Why don't we implement? So that is a direction that we come from the architect team, or the direction could be from ourselves. When we feel that there is a new technology, for example, React or Angular is doing very good in the market and they're having more advantages than the jQuery, their functionality becomes simple. So in this case, we will reach out to the architect team. We provide our insights, and mostly once they go through around, if they feel that there is no immediate hazard to the application, they will direct us to provide a proof of concept. So here we take a simple module with limited changes that we can implement and present to the technical board. So in the technical board, they will understand, we will provide the details so that they will follow through that, and they will have their questions, they will raise their doubts, we answer them, and if everything is fine, that's when we bring in the technology to the application. So in this process, what happens is like, so that is the process we did till now, and that's how we brought this Gulp and Handlebars. But for automating, we need to provide much more details to the CM team as well. So once we started seeing that Handlebars is good and it is being used in multiple applications. So it's not a single person job. Now we are reaching out to CM team, and they are providing us, they are assisting us to implement this in the Jenkins itself. So the automation could be happen, and once we made any changes in the source, we generate the output file. But as of today, we have the responsibility to minify the file. For example, in the Gulp, we will minify the file and we will check in the output file because we are using it. But at the same time, we need to provide we need to update the changes in the gulp.js, and we need to publish the source. Because if we miss to publish this source, tomorrow if someone else is trying to make any change, your changes are not there and it's gone. So people don't understand where the change came from and how the changes are made. So as of today, it is our responsibility. And as the time proceeds, we will lean towards the same team to take over this job. But we need to provide them as much details that we can provide so that they can provide us with the automation.
Okay.
So that answers your question, right?
Yes, yes. And the required.js, how we use in application?
So for required.js, I need to go to any of the site. I can show it on the browser itself. So for using required.js, there are three things here. First thing, we need to have the library itself, that is required.js. So if you see here, right, we included this in our include.js.jsp, and we have the library in common module because we are using it in search results page, we are using it in available units page. And this is a new technology that we brought in last year. I don't think it's been 1 year yet. And so as we proceed further, as we develop new pages, we tend to use required.js. So we saw the opportunity to make it into a common module. So the library is in common module. And we are including required.js because this we need to be there on the server rendering itself. So this is there in include.js.jsp for the weak search. So this is the first thing. The second thing is the library definitions. So the second thing is our library definition. So as I said, every file has a unique name. For example, jQuery min.js has the name as jQuery-lib. Bootstrap has the name as Bootstrap. So if we follow this list, right, each and every file has a unique name. So the definitions is again important that we need to provide. And along with that, we provide the dependency architecture. That is like what file is dependent on the other. For example, Bootstrap is how the Bootstrap is loaded after the jQuery. How the jQuery UI is loaded after the jQuery. Because we provided a dependency architecture that first it is jQuery that need to be loaded on the browser and then the rest. And the third one is you use search app. We call it as like app.js, and in the search module it is named as search app.js. So if you follow the code, so in the search app we are saying that we need to have all these files. So it is like we provide the definition, and these are the names of the files that we require. So we provided the list of the names, and there is one more file. I'll provide you that. So yes, so this is the one. This is the other file. So we are giving require.js has a configuration module. So configuration is nothing but, as I said, every file has a name. So these are the file names, and these are the names that we provided for the file. And this is the path. So every file has a base path. So it needs to go to static/js, and then we have all the files there. And the second thing is what are all dependencies. For example, jQuery lib, it doesn't have any dependency. It can load on the DOM at any time. But when it comes to Bootstrap, this is a dependency. Bootstrap need to be loaded only after the jQuery. So even though if required tries to load Bootstrap first, this dependency will wait till jQuery is loaded on the browser. So in that case, our Bootstrap will never fail because it has the dependencies mentioned. The same way, Common Responsive Toolkit is our custom file that uses some of the classes provided in the Bootstrap. So for that, Bootstrap is a mandatory. So that has a dependency for the Bootstrap. Again, it is nested. For example, if the required tries to load Common Responsive Toolkit first, then this particular file will wait for the Bootstrap. Again, in turn, Bootstrap will wait for the jQuery. So technically, Common Responsive Toolkit has a dependency of both jQuery and Bootstrap. And for example, in the point set, there are a couple of dependencies. That is, it has both maps and jQuery. It needs both. And unless then, we should not load point search. So this is how we provide that dependency management. So now there are two files here, right? One is the path and the configuration. The second one is what are the files that we need to include. And the third one is the library on its own, which we mentioned in the include.js.jsp. So this is how require is implemented. Require doesn't need much of coding. All it requires is understanding what need to be loaded first and how the dependencies should be managed.
Okay.
So this is with JavaScript, jQuery, with require handlebars and the JSpace. Now there are a few more other things. I might not be updated with some other technologies, like we used to have Adobe Tag Management. I mean, we still have Adobe Tag Management, but we are moving towards Google Tag Management. But I don't have complete updates on that because it is being implemented by a different team, and that process is not completed yet. They're still doing for certain pages. So I didn't have much details about it. So when you see an error on any of the page, right, you tend to identify where the source is. So this is really important to understand where all the sources we are getting from. There are some files that are there in the tag management, Adobe Tag Management, but usually this is all handled by the business itself. I forgot the URL. I'll provide the URL later. I just close the chat. So if you just remember that there used to be a chat icon here, right? So that chat, based on the user, based on the locale, there are some parameters. So for a particular locale, for a certain page, for a certain conditions, the conditions are again provided in the DTM. Based on that, we are triggering that particular chat icon, and that is again developed on pure JavaScript. Yeah, completely on JavaScript, and that is there in the DTM. The code itself is there in the DTM. And one more thing I want to show today is about the message catalog. So message catalog, this particular tool. So, yes,
Rajesh.
Yes, friend.
Yeah, I mean, there is a 1 hour session we scheduled for message catalog with Komal tomorrow.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, maybe you can
Yeah, I
follow
will
high
skip
level,
for
or you
that
can
now.
skip and move on to the next one. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And Amateur also, there will be a session tomorrow for Amateur and
Yes.
analytics. So
Yes.
there's also planned session is there tomorrow. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, friend.
Yeah.
So that brings us back with, so we talked about CSS, JS. I think I covered most of it. So does anyone have any questions? Did you guys follow everything, or do you have, you need any questions or any feedback?
So you are showing us that account details, right? So if you can go to the JSP page, and from the server side rendering, if you show us the code, we will be familiar with that code.
Okay. Right. So let us follow from the code perspective. So our starting point will be the controller, as I said. Where is the controller? Right. So our starting point will be the controller. So the controller will tell us like what is the definition that we are using in the tiles.xml. In our account details page, the way we identified is this. We have /details, and that leaves us with either we are going to retain account details or the other one. So let's go in this path. So let us assume that the user, the criteria is matching to bring us to account details. So from here, so my account source, tiles.xml. So we are using this particular definition, account details, and we are extending responsive layout, and we are using my account details.jsp. So this is the JSP that is being called for this particular URL, right? So now let's go to account details.jsp in my account. So that is in JSP, my account details.jsp. So in this account details.jsp, tiles insert attribute name header. So we are including our header. So as I said, inside the body, we have header, body, and the footer. So this is the structure. So we are adding our header. So this is tiles insert attribute name equals to header is our header, and tiles insert attribute name equals to footer is our footer. So Ajax spinner is nothing but the spinner icon that we see when a page is loading. And here in this particular page, there is an account details, there is a div, it's an empty div. So since we are developed this page using handlebars, right, we need a placeholder the same way we go ahead with. So today's technology, either it is React or Angular or handlebars, even the jQuery, we need a placeholder. We need a class identifier or an ID identifier so that we can build the HTML and then append it to the DOM. In our case, we have one class which is empty. The rest everything is header and footer. And we tend to include our HTML into that particular div. So whatever is there inside the HTML will be added into this particular div. Again, in account details.html, we don't have much details. There, what all we have are different placeholders. So for balances, we have a placeholder. For deposits, we have a placeholder. So account details.html is nothing but a file which has the structure of the page. So in that page, we have this particular line and the placeholder to add all these details, alerts, and the placeholder to add all these details. Now we are in this page, we are including account details.js, right? And in account details.js, we have all the handlebar, some handlebar detailed code. This is like in handlebar you don't have if-else conditions because it is purely templating. Handlebar highly recommends not to use any conditional statements inside the handlebar files itself. So, and it does not provide us that flexibility. So we need to do such kind of operations outside the handlebars. So based on certain flags, if the value is toggle, so we are doing certain functions. So based on the flag, all those details are provided here. And when we want to use any custom function inside the handlebars, we need to first register them in the handlebars itself. So this is all related to handlebars. The other thing is like how we are appending the details. Yes, here. So for the favorites, right? Especially if we go here, I'll show you the. So favorites is a section where we can have different types. For example, favorite searches, favorite resorts, and favorite content. So based on each particular div, we need to load those details. And these are simple jQuery calls which actually parse through the data, and we have the filtering condition. So the data is huge. It has all the details about the account details, and then we split the data into our required modules, and then we provide it to the function. So this particular file, all it does is like read the data and append it to the placeholder. So since we have the placeholders, we are just appending it, and the styling and all, it's already there in the handlebars. I'll show one handlebars file as well. So this is how the handlebars looks. Handlebar is nothing but it is straight HTML file. It is like a template, but it has this flexibility to add dynamic content. So if you see double flower braces with a hash is nothing but a loop. So it is a condition. Hash will tell handlebar that it is a handlebar function to look for. And here what we are doing is like if it is an if condition. So handlebar, to understand this condition, we need to register first what is alert enabled. So in account details page, as I said, So all these functions, whatever we are trying to use, like the string compare. So we are using the string compare method, and I'll show you how here. So yes, so this is the string compare. This is the method we actually registered with the handlebar. So what it does is like we are providing a value, and it does the comparison. So here we are providing this thing. We are providing a cross-cell list. This is nothing but a variable, and we are providing the value of the variable to the function, and it provides the output whether to include this particular section or not based on the user selection. So this is how the handlebars is all written. So in general, it is pure HTML with the handlebar tags. But for the templatization, we separate them into different modules. So tomorrow, if you want to make any change in the alert section of this particular page, we need not look for in the entire page. All we need to do is, like, since this is an account details page, we need to go to this particular handlebar source file and figure out what we need to do. So this leaves us, sorry?
Is that similar to the FreeMarker language?
Yeah, we can say like kind of. So handlebars is it's a notation being used very similar to Mustache or Google Closure templates. Okay. So this leaves us with the happy part. So if everything is working fine, everything is doing as we are expecting, then we are covering all the flow. But what if there is an error? In that case, every module will have an error block. So that is our last topic for today. So in Weeks account, in the views, before we go to the view, so this is our JSPs are our happy paths. So if everything is working fine, if all the data is flowing good, then it comes to JSP. But what if there is an error? Then we need to take there are two types of error handling here. One, we display the error on the page itself. For example, we are not able to bring certain details, but that does not let the user perform the regular task that the user want to perform. In that case, we should let the user do. So at that point, we just display a banner on top of the error page, and certain times we should not let the user continue. So we should take them to the error page. For example, if there is a network error and the page is not loading, we can't let the user to see a 404. Instead, we will take them to an error page. So all the errors, right? So either of the scenarios, whether you are loading a banner or whether you are bringing a whole new page, it is all inside this particular error module. So account details does not have an error page on its own. Yes, account details page does not have an error page on its own, because the errors account details page, if we are not displaying certain data, we are not letting the user down. But if you are on a confirmation page, or if you are on the search results page where the user wants to perform some good action, for example, if the user is not able to proceed further with the payment, then we need to take them to an error page saying, providing the details, what exactly happened, whether the user was able to book the reservation or we did not book the reservation, if the credit card has any issues. So all these details we need to inform to the user. So we target them to an error page. I think week's order. So based on the user's action, here again we are bringing the error.page. So if it is a WoW user and an RCA member, and Yes. So based on these filters, right, we are bringing this error dot page. So when we say it is a dot page, then business have the highest control. So business will have. So this is like nothing but a team site page, and business have the hard control what to display and how to display. So mostly it is all designed in the team site itself. So this leaves us with the error path, how the errors are happening. So mostly these will be in the controller itself. So if it is a not successful, let's go to once our controller. Um, because from the controller, it's all the presentation layer, right? So if it did not cross the controller, if it did cross the controller, then technically there shouldn't be an issue. It is all filtered at that level itself. So yeah, so mostly this error page directions or redirections or the content that need to be displayed, the error code mapping. Mostly these are all done at the higher level, at especially at the controller or at the service level. But this is a very good insight to know where the error page is there and how we are bringing up the error page. So I think I might be a bit fast. So if you guys have any questions or whenever you need any more details, feel free to ping me. Mostly I will be available, and you can drop an email. I will reply. So you have any other questions now?
One thing, are we doing any kind of, test for this UI, presentation layer?
I didn't follow the question. Are we doing any?
Unit testing or any kind of behavioral testing?
You mean in the testing perspective?
Yeah.
So, so before we get a design, right, so we need to understand this part. So what we are doing is, I don't say every time, but most of the time, we are not designing the page by our own. So before we develop anything, business and we have some third-party vendors with whom our business will be working closely to identify the key areas of development. So, for example, if we want to provide a points protection feature during cancellation, because when a member wants to cancel the reservation, and if they use their weeks, if they use their points in the points world, as of today, in the cancellation page, we don't have any scope for the member to protect their points. So once the user is aware that they are going to lose some 10 or 20,000 points, it is a good business opportunity to provide a points protection feature there. But business will be working closely with one of these third-party vendors, or sometimes it will be us. They will ask us like, how about if we do a PPRO protection in the cancellation funnel? At that point, we are going to design, but that won't go to the production straight. It will be first go to the A/B testing, where a certain members will be targeted, and they will run special suites where like a bunch of people, I should not say bunch, there will be certain dedicated people called in. So it's a big process. And they will collect the information, and then based on the cumulative information, they will decide. That's when we will be asked to develop something. So if you get an opportunity to be part even before A/B testing, that is very good. That's when we can actually provide some new designs or anything. If not, we will have the wireframes, and then we need to develop. And now with the new tools that are available with our designing team, right? They're even providing us the HTML. So yes, everything will be A/B tested even before we start developing.
Okay. Now my question is a little different. Like for Java development, we are doing unit testing or any kind of
Okay, got it. So you're asking about unit testing, right? Yes. We were supposed to go with, so there are a couple of tools that we implemented. One is Karma, and so Karma is nothing but it provides us the, it's like a test cases. We write the tests and we run the test cases. It is a very good practice to go with the unit testing. But again, we don't have the complete suite to run unit testing, especially with the presentation layer technologies like jQuery, JavaScript as of now. We tried to implement Karma earlier. We had a test case suite and we went with the review board. It's all accepted. But down the line, it's not yet implemented. It's a good thing to have. Probably we might be implementing these in near future.
Okay.
One thing to be very well noted is like the extensive use of jQuery and any other technologies based on jQuery came only after the site is responsive. So which started a couple of years ago. So it is an incremental process. Things won't happen on a single night, but definitely they will change. From complete server-side rendering, we are moving towards client-side rendering. And from complete JSPs, we are moving towards handlebars. So as the flow increases to the front-end technologies, right, we'll definitely come to a situation where we need unit test cases for it. But as I said, it is a step-by-step. In near future, probably from the next release, or then you can start now providing us some good feedback, which one to implement and what is good for the development, which handles with the development. But yes, we will soon implement.
Okay. Because my last project we used like Selenium test, like automation test cases for those, like behavioral testing, Cucumber test and all. So I thought of something like that to have here.
So you use Selenium for jQuery functionality unit testing?
Not this is not unit testing. This is like browser interaction, behavioral testing.
Okay.
Behavioral testing, yeah. But JUnit we used Jasmine, but it did not work well. We
Right.
stopped some.
So with respect to testing, right? I should say only we have control till unit testing. It's a kind of our responsibility to go ahead with unit testing and all. Mm-hmm. But post our development, there is a huge testing suite. They have like a lot of tools and lot of information. It's huge. It's not just like one. It's not like a person testing an entire application or kind of thing. We have like our dev testing, QA testing, and then UAT, and they have lot many tools implementing these days. Like they kick off so many tools, man. So they provide a lot of details at once, but we are responsible up to unit testing, so that we don't break our code and we don't break anyone else's code because of our implementation.
Right.
So any other questions?
No, Rajesh. Thank you, Rajesh.
So, okay. So if you need any other details or anything, I will be available on my email and on Skype. So.
One of the best presentation we have so far. Very detailed. Thank you very much.
Thanks, yes. So feel free to ping and I will be available. And thanks, Trini, for joining and introducing the team. So that's all for now.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.